The quiet town of Pine Hollow was forever changed when 5-year-old twins Lily and Lucas Bennett disappeared during a kindergarten nature walk at Whispering Pines National Park. The case went cold despite the tireless efforts of Detective Morgan Reed, who refused to let go even as years passed without a single clue. Now, 15 years later, a hunter's discovery in a remote cave has reignited the investigation, bringing buried secrets to light. What really happened that day? And how could this new evidence unravel a mystery that has haunted the community for over a decade? Let's find out. But before we dive into this story, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy mysteries with unexpected twists, don't forget to subscribe. The morning fog still clung to the trees as Detective Morgan Reed pulled into the parking lot of Pine Hollow Police Department. The station looked exactly the same as it had 15 years ago. The same faded brick exterior, the same American flag hanging limply from its pole, the same sense of small-town tranquility that had been shattered on that spring day when the Bennett twins vanished without a trace. Morgan had been just a rookie detective then, barely 3 months into the job. The disappearance of Lily and Lucas Bennett was supposed to be her big case, the one that would prove her worth to the department. Instead, it became her greatest failure, a wound that never fully healed. As she walked through the station doors, Morgan noticed the immediate hush that fell over the room. Conversations dwindled to whispers, and eyes darted away from her as if afraid to make contact. She swallowed hard, pushing down the familiar feeling of judgment that threatened to overwhelm her. "Detective Reed," a voice called from across the high room. Morgan turned to see Chief Robert Landry standing in the doorway of his office. At 65, Landry was a relic from another era of policing, resistant to change and quick to dismiss modern investigative techniques. His silver hair and weathered face spoke of decades on the force, and his perpetual frown seemed permanently etched into his features. "Chief Landry," Morgan nodded, her voice steady despite the tension between them. "I came as soon as I got your call." Landry's eyes narrowed slightly, his expression unreadable. "My office, now." As Morgan followed him into the small, cluttered space, she could feel the weight of the past pressing down on her shoulders. 15 years had done little to ease the burden of the Bennett case. If anything, time had only made it heavier. "Assume you've heard the news," Landry said, settling into his creaking chair. Morgan remained standing, her posture rigid. "Only what you mentioned on the phone. A hunter found something in Crawford Caves that might be related to the Bennett case." Landry nodded, pulling a plastic evidence bag from his desk drawer. Inside was a small, dirt-encrusted backpack with faded cartoon princesses still visible on its pink fabric. Even caked with 15 years of dirt, Morgan recognized it immediately. "Lily, Bennett's backpack," she whispered, her heart racing. "Found yesterday by a local hunter about 2 miles deep in Crawford Caves," Landry confirmed. Along with this, he produced a second evidence bag containing a blue backpack with dinosaur patches, Lucas's. The sight of the twins' belongings, preserved like ghastly time capsules, sent a chill down Morgan's spine. "Where exactly in the caves?" Morgan asked, her mind already racing through the implications. "Northern Passage, in a chamber that's difficult to access," Landry replied. "The hunter, Michael Dawson, was tracking a wounded deer when he stumbled upon what he described as some kind of hidden camp." Morgan's eyes widened. "A camp? You mean someone was living in the caves?" "That's what we need to find out," Landry said, his voice grave. "And that's why you're here." Morgan's breath caught in her throat. "You want me back on the case?" Landry's expression hardened. "Not exactly. The county is sending over Detective James Parker from the cold case unit to lead the investigation. You'll assist and provide background on the original disappearance." Morgan felt a surge of indignation. This had been her case, her burden, for 15 years. And now, at the first sign of a break, they were sidelining her for an outsider. "With all due respect, Chief, I know this case better than anyone. I've kept up with every development, every theory, and that's precisely the problem," Landry interrupted, his voice sharp. "You're too close to this, Reed. You always have been. Your obsession with the Bennett case nearly destroyed your career once. I won't let it happen again." Morgan wanted to protest further, but the determined set of Landry's jaw told her it would be futile. Instead, she asked, "When does Parker arrive?" "He's already here," a voice said from the doorway. Morgan turned to see a tall man with dark hair streaked with premature gray. He wore a well-tailored suit that immediately marked him as an outsider in their small-town department. "Detective James Parker," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about you, Detective Reed." Morgan shook his hand briefly, sizing him up. "I wish I could say the same." Parker smiled, seemingly unperturbed by her coolness. "I've reviewed your original case files. Impressive work, especially for a rookie detective. I'm looking forward to working together." "The backpacks have been sent to the state lab for analysis," Landry interjected. "In the meantime, Parker wants to interview the key players from the original investigation." "Starting with Miss Patricia Weber," Parker added. Morgan stiffened at the name. Patricia Weber had been the kindergarten teacher responsible for the class trip on the day the twins disappeared. Her negligence had cost her career and nearly resulted in criminal charges, though she was ultimately cleared of wrongdoing. "Weber hasn't spoken about the case in years," Morgan said. "Not since the civil suit was settled. Which is why I need someone she might trust," Parker replied, his voice diplomatic but firm. "Someone who treated her fairly during the original investigation." Morgan felt a twinge of guilt. While others had been quick to vilify Weber, Morgan had always suspected there was more to the story than simple negligence. The teacher had seemed genuinely devastated by the disappearance, haunted in a way that went beyond guilt. "Fine," Morgan agreed reluctantly. "But I should warn you, Patricia Weber isn't the same person she was 15 years ago. The town made sure of that." As they left Landry's office, Morgan couldn't shake the feeling that the discovery of the backpacks was just the beginning. After 15 years of silence, the Bennett case was suddenly speaking again, and Morgan wasn't sure she was ready to hear what it had to say. But like it or not, the past was resurfacing, bringing with it secrets long buried. And this time, Morgan was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The small house at the end of Maple Street seemed to shrink into itself, as if trying to disappear from view. Once bright yellow paint had faded to a sickly beige, peeling away to reveal the weathered wood beneath. The garden, which had once been Patricia Weber's pride, was now overrun with weeds, the remnants of neglect stretching back years. As Morgan and Parker approached the front door, Morgan couldn't help but remember the last time she'd been here, 10 years ago, on the 5th anniversary of the twins' disappearance. Patricia had been drunk, raving about shadows in the woods and eyes watching from the trees. Morgan had dismissed it as the ramblings of a broken woman consumed by guilt. Now, she wondered if there had been something more to Patricia's words. "Let me take the lead," Morgan said quietly. "She knows me." Parker nodded, stepping back slightly as Morgan knocked on the door. After a long moment, they heard shuffling footsteps, followed by the metallic slide of multiple locks being undone. The door opened just enough to reveal a sliver of Patricia. Weber's face, once youthful and vibrant, now gaunt and lined with years of suffering. Her once bright blue eyes were dull and suspicious, darting between Morgan and Parker. "Miss Weber?" Morgan said gently. "It's Detective Reed. Morgan Reed. Do you remember me?" Recognition flickered in Patricia's eyes, followed immediately by fear. "What do you want? I've said everything I have to say about that day. I've paid my price." "We're not here to accuse you of anything," Morgan assured her. "Something's been found, Patricia. Something related to Lily and Lucas." Patricia's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening. After a moment of hesitation, she opened the door wider, revealing a living room cluttered with newspapers, books, and what appeared to be research materials. "Come in," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't have long. They'll know you're here." Morgan and Parker exchanged a glance as they entered the house. Patricia's paranoia was evident not just in her words, but in the home itself. Heavy curtains blocked out all natural light, and Morgan spotted at least 3 different security systems installed by the front door. "Who will know we're here, Patricia?" Morgan asked carefully. Patricia ignored the question, moving to a table covered with maps, photographs, and handwritten notes. "You found something," she said, not looking at them. "What was it?" "The twins' backpacks," Parker replied. "In Crawford." "Caves." Patricia's head snapped up, her eyes suddenly sharp with a clarity that surprised Morgan. "Crawford Caves," she repeated. "Of course, it makes sense." "What makes sense?" Morgan pressed, increasingly concerned by Patricia's behavior. Patricia began, shuffling through her papers, pulling out a map of Whispering Pines National Park with red markings all over it. "I've been tracking them," she said, her voice taking on an almost feverish quality. "For 15 years I've been tracking their movements, trying to understand their patterns." "Whose movements, Patricia?" Parker asked, stepping closer to examine the map. "The people who took them," Patricia replied, as if it were obvious. "The ones who've been watching the park for years. The ones nobody believes exist." Morgan felt a chill run down her spine. Patricia's theory sounded like the product of a guilt-ridden mind desperately seeking explanations beyond her own negligence. And yet, there was something in her certainty that gave Morgan pause. "Why don't you start from the beginning?" Morgan suggested, pulling out a chair. "Tell us what you remember about that day." Patricia sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "It was supposed to be a simple nature walk," she began, her voice distant as if recalling a dream. 20 children, myself, and 2 parent volunteers. We stayed on the main trail, just like always. Her eyes focused on something far away as she continued. "It was when we stopped for lunch that it happened. All the children were sitting in the meadow, eating their sandwiches. I was helping little Emma with her juice box when one of the parent volunteers, Mrs. Holloway, came up to me in a panic. She said she'd seen Lily and Lucas walking into the woods with someone. A park ranger, she thought. I immediately did a head count and realized they were missing." Patricia's hands began to tremble. "We called out for them, searched the immediate area. Nothing. That's when I radioed for help." Morgan nodded, remembering the timeline from the original investigation. "And you're certain they were with someone who looked like a park ranger?" "That's what Mrs. Holloway said," Patricia replied. "But when the real rangers arrived, none of them had seen the twins. And later, Mrs. Holloway changed her story. Said she wasn't sure what she saw, that maybe the twins had just wandered off on their own." "Why would she change her story?" Parker asked, his interest clearly piqued. Patricia's eyes darted to the windows before she leaned in, lowering her voice. "Because they got to her. The same people who've been watching me ever since. The same people who made sure I'd never be believed if I told the truth." Morgan exchanged another glance with Parker. Patricia's conspiracy theory seemed far-fetched. And yet, the backpacks had been found in a cave 2 miles from the trail, a difficult journey for 2 5-year-olds to make on their own. "Patricia," Morgan said carefully, "do you have any proof of these people you believe are watching you?" Patricia laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "Proof? I've spent 15 years trying to gather proof. But every time I get close, things disappear. People refuse to talk. Evidence vanishes." She gestured to the cluttered room. "All I have are patterns, Detective. Patterns and coincidences that stopped being coincidences years ago." "What kind of patterns?" Parker asked, his tone neutral but interested. Patricia pulled out a thick folder from beneath the maps. "Children have been disappearing from Whispering Pines and the surrounding areas for decades. Not many. One every few years. Always young, always dismissed as accidents or runaways. She opened the folder to reveal newspaper clippings, missing person reports and handwritten notes spanning back to the 1970s. Morgan had to admit, seeing them all compiled together was unsettling. Most were never found, Patricia continued. But those that were, she pulled out 3 photos and laid them side by side, all discovered in or near caves, just like the Bennett twins' backpacks. Morgan felt her professional skepticism warring, with a growing sense of unease. She'd investigated the Bennett case thoroughly, but she'd never connected it to other disappearances in the region. Had she missed something crucial? Why would someone target these children? Parker asked, examining the photos closely. Patricia shook her head. I don't know their reasons. I only know their methods. They watch, they wait, they take. And they're very, very careful not to leave evidence. Morgan was about to ask another question when her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from the state lab regarding the backpacks. Preliminary results are in, she announced, scanning the message. They found trace evidence on both backpacks. Soil samples consistent with Crawford Caves, but also, she paused, her brow furrowing. Synthetic fibers not consistent with the backpacks themselves or the children's clothing. And DNA traces from an unidentified male. Patricia's expression changed from anxiety to vindication. You see? They were taken, just like I've been saying for 15 years. As Morgan and Parker prepared to leave, Patricia gripped Morgan's arm with surprising strength. Be careful, she whispered urgently. They're still out there. And now that you're looking again, they'll be watching you too. Driving back to the station, Morgan couldn't shake Patricia's warning. Part of her wanted to dismiss it as paranoia, yet the evidence from the backpacks suggested Patricia might be right about one thing. The Bennett twins hadn't simply wandered off and gotten lost. Someone else had been involved. What do you think? She asked Parker, breaking the silence. Parker considered the question carefully. I think Patricia Weber is deeply traumatized and possibly suffering from paranoia, he said finally. But I also think trauma and paranoia don't preclude her from being right. Morgan nodded, relieved that Parker wasn't dismissing Patricia outright. We need to talk to Mrs. Holloway next, she said. If she really did see the twins with someone dressed as a park ranger, that's our first real lead in 15 years. And we need to examine those caves ourselves, Parker added. If the backpacks were part of some kind of camp, as the hunter described, there might be more evidence waiting to be found. As they pulled into the police station, Morgan noticed Chief Landry speaking with a well-dressed man she didn't recognize. The man's expensive suit and commanding presence seemed out of place in their small town. Who's that with Landry? She asked, parking the car. Parker's expression turned guarded. That's Senator William Crawford. His family has owned land around here for generations, including the caves where the backpacks were found. Morgan's eyes widened in surprise. Crawford? As in Crawford Caves? What's a state senator doing here talking to our chief? That, Parker said grimly, is an excellent question. As they walked toward the station, Morgan felt the weight of Patricia's files in her bag and the echo of her warning in her mind. Perhaps there was more to this case than she had ever imagined. A web of connections and secrets stretching back decades, now threatening to unravel with the discovery of 2 small backpacks in a cave. The presence of Senator Crawford at the police station sent ripples of unease through Morgan. As she and Parker approached, she could see Chief Landry's deferential body language, shoulders slightly hunched, head nodding too frequently. The power dynamic was clear even from a distance. Ah, detectives, Landry called out, spotting them. Perfect timing. Senator Crawford has kindly offered the resources of his office to assist with the investigation. The senator turned, his practiced smile never reaching his eyes. Detective Parker, good to see you again, and you must be Detective Reed. I've heard a great deal about your dedication to this case. Morgan accepted his outstretched hand, noting, his firm grip and the expensive watch peeking from beneath his sleeve. "Senator, I wasn't aware the state had an interest in our investigation." "The Bennett case affected our entire community," Crawford replied smoothly. "And since the discovery was made on my family's property, I feel a certain responsibility to help however I can." Something about his polished response felt rehearsed to Morgan. "Your family's property extends into the national park?" she asked, feigning ignorance. A flicker of annoyance crossed Crawford's face before his political mask slipped back into place. "The boundaries have been disputed for years, Detective. My family has historical claims to portions of what is now the park, including the cave system where these backpacks were discovered." Parker cleared his throat. "We appreciate your concern, Senator, but at this stage we're keeping details of the investigation confidential." Crawford's smile tightened. "Of course, Detective. I wouldn't dream of interfering. I simply wanted to offer my support and express my hope that this discovery might finally bring closure to the Bennett family." He checked his watch. "Speaking of which, I have a meeting with them this afternoon." "A courtesy visit?" Morgan felt her hackles rise. "The Bennetts didn't mention any meeting when I spoke with them this morning." "It was arranged rather suddenly," Crawford replied, unperturbed, "in light of the recent developments." As the senators took his leave, Morgan and Parker exchanged meaningful glances. Something about Crawford's interest in the case felt off. Inside the station, Morgan pulled Parker aside. "Why would a state senator be personally involved in a 15-year-old missing persons case?" "The Crawford family has deep roots here," Parker explained in a low voice. "Senator Crawford's grandfather established the logging operation that built this town in the 1940s. The family has maintained significant influence ever since. But that doesn't explain his interest in the Bennett case specifically," Morgan pressed. Parker's expression turned thoughtful. "Maybe it doesn't. Or maybe it's exactly what it appears to be. A politician seeking positive publicity from a high-profile case in his constituency." Morgan wasn't convinced, but before she could respond, a junior officer approached with a message. Mrs. Holloway, the parent volunteer who claimed to have seen the twins with a ranger on the day they disappeared, had agreed to meet with them. The Holloway residence stood in stark contrast to Patricia Weber's neglected home. Located in Pine Hollow's most affluent neighborhood, the sprawling colonial house spoke of old money and careful maintenance. As Morgan and Parker were ushered into an immaculate living room by a housekeeper, Morgan couldn't help but note the family photographs prominently displayed, happy moments carefully curated to tell a story of perfect domestic bliss. "Detectives," Eleanor Holloway greeted them, entering the room with measured steps. At 62, she remained an imposing figure in Pine Hollow society, president of the Garden Club, board member for several local charities, and wife to the town's most successful attorney. "Mrs. Holloway." Morgan nodded. "Thank you for seeing us on such short notice." "Of course," Eleanor replied, gesturing for them to sit. "Though I must say I was surprised by your call. It's been many years since anyone has asked me about that. Terrible day." Parker took the lead. "As you may have heard, new evidence has been discovered relating to the Bennett case. We're speaking with everyone who was present during the kindergarten trip to refresh our understanding of the events." Eleanor's perfectly manicured fingers fidgeted with her pearl necklace. "I'm not sure what more I can add. My statement has been on record for 15 years. Your initial statement," Morgan clarified, "mentioned seeing the twins walking with someone you believed to be a park ranger. But you later amended that statement, saying you weren't certain what you saw." A flicker of discomfort crossed Eleanor's face. "Yes, well, in the chaos and panic of the moment, one's perceptions can be unreliable. After reflection, I realized I couldn't be certain." "Mrs. Holloway," Morgan said gently, "we're not here to assign blame or reopen old wounds. But those children have been missing for 15 years, and their backpacks were just found in a cave system miles from where they disappeared. If there's anything," Anything at all that you remember about that day that might help us understand what happened, now is the time to share it. Eleanor's composure wavered slightly. She glanced toward the hallway, as if checking whether they were truly alone, before leaning forward. "You have to understand," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Pine Hollow was different then. The logging operation was still the main employer. The Crawford family controlled everything from jobs to loans to who got elected. Crossing them wasn't an option if you wanted to live here. Morgan felt her pulse quicken. "What does the Crawford family have to do with what you saw in the woods that day?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "The person I saw with the twins. He wasn't wearing an official park ranger uniform. It was more like logging company gear, but with patches that resembled ranger insignia. I only caught a glimpse, but he seemed to be leading the children deeper into the woods." "And you reported this initially?" Parker prompted. "Yes," Eleanor confirmed. "But that evening, my husband received a call from Senator Crawford, just a state representative back then. He expressed his concern that false reports about logging company employees might damage the town's economy and reputation. He pressured you to change your statement," Morgan concluded, anger rising in her chest. Eleanor nodded, shame evident in her downcast eyes. "My husband's law firm handled all of Crawford Lumber's legal matters. We had 2 children in private schools. We couldn't afford to lose everything." "So you said you weren't sure what you saw," Parker said, his tone neutral, but his eyes intense. "And the investigation focused on the theory that the twins had wandered off alone. I've regretted it every day since," Eleanor whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Patricia Weber lost everything, her career, her reputation, her peace of mind. And those poor children." "Mrs. Holloway," Morgan said firmly, "we need you to make a new statement, officially on the record." Eleanor paled. "You don't understand. Even after all these years, the Crawfords still have influence. William is a state senator now. His cousin runs the lumber operation. Their family owns half the commercial real estate in town." "We can protect you," Parker assured her, though Morgan noticed the slight hesitation in his voice. "Like you protected Patricia Weber?" Eleanor asked bitterly. "Look what happened to her. 15 years of being the town pariah, living in fear and isolation." Before Morgan could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from the lab. "Urgent. DNA from backpacks matches unsolved case in adjacent county from 1987. Morgan's mind raced. If the DNA connected to a case from 1987, that supported Patricia's theory about a pattern of disappearances stretching back decades. "Mrs. Holloway," Morgan said, her resolve strengthening. "I understand your fear. But this isn't just about Lily and Lucas anymore. There may be other cases, other children. Your testimony could be crucial." Eleanor studied Morgan's face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll make a statement, but not here. I don't trust the local department." She glanced meaningfully toward Parker. "No offense, Detective." "None taken," Parker replied. "We can arrange for you to speak with state investigators at a secure location." As they prepared to leave, Eleanor stopped them at the door. "There's something else you should know," she said quietly. "The man I saw that day, I'm almost certain it was Robert Landry." Morgan felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath her feet. "Chief Landry? But he was a patrol officer back then." "Yes," Eleanor confirmed. "And before that, he worked security for Crawford Lumber for 20 years. The Crawfords paid for his police academy training." The implications were staggering. If Landry had been involved in the twins' disappearance and had later risen to become chief of police, he would have been in the perfect position to ensure the investigation led nowhere. Back in the car, Morgan's mind whirled with connections and possibilities. "We need to access the 1987 case files immediately," she told Parker. "And we need to look into Landry's history with Crawford Lumber." Parker nodded, his expression grave. There's more going on here than a single missing persons case. If Patricia Weber is right about the pattern of disappearances, and if the Crawfords and Landry are somehow involved, then we're up against people with the power and resources to bury the truth, Morgan finished grimly. And they've been doing it for decades. As they drove away from the Holloway residence, Morgan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The weight of 15 years of unanswered questions pressed down on her. But now, for the first time, she sensed they were close to breaking through the web of secrecy surrounding the Bennett twins' disappearance. What she didn't yet realize was just how dangerous that breakthrough would prove to be, not just for the investigation, but for everyone involved in uncovering the dark secrets hidden in the caves and forests of Pine Hollow. The next morning, Morgan arrived at the station early, determined to dig deeper into the connections between Chief Landry and the Crawford family. The building was quiet, with only a few officers from the night shift preparing to clock out. Making her way to the records room, Morgan used her access code to enter the dimly lit space lined with filing cabinets and shelves of dusty boxes. The department had digitized most of its recent records, but cases from before 2000 remained largely in paper form, tucked away and rarely accessed. Morgan located the personnel files section and began searching for Landry's records. To her surprise, his file was unusually thin, containing only basic information about his police academy training and subsequent promotions. There was no mention of his previous employment with Crawford Lumber, despite Eleanor Holloway's claim that he had worked there for 20 years. Looking for something specific, Detective. Morgan spun around to find Chief Landry standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. She hadn't heard him enter. Just reviewing some background information for the Bennett case, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The connection to the 1987 case raises questions about possible patterns. Landry's eyes narrowed slightly. The lab results were preliminary. Cross-contamination is still a possibility. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. I understand you and Parker spoke with Eleanor Holloway yesterday. The implicit question hung in the air between them. Morgan maintained her composure, unwilling to reveal how much Eleanor had told them. We're interviewing all key witnesses from the original investigation. And Patricia Weber? Landry pressed. I hear you visited her as well. Her perspective is important, Morgan said carefully. She was there when the twins disappeared. Landry moved closer, his intimidating presence filling the small room. Weber is unstable, Morgan. Has been for years, building conspiracy theories to avoid facing her own negligence. And yet, Morgan countered, the backpacks were found miles into the cave system, exactly where an unstable Patricia Weber predicted they might be. A muscle twitched in Landry's jaw. Coincidence, or lucky guesswork. Maybe, Morgan conceded, watching him closely. But the DNA evidence suggests otherwise, as does Eleanor Holloway's original statement about seeing the twins with someone who looked like a ranger. Holloway recanted that statement 15 years ago, Landry reminded her sharply. Under pressure, according to her, Morgan replied, letting the implication hang. Landry's face darkened. Be careful, Detective. You're treading on dangerous ground. This investigation is about finding out what happened to those children, not dredging up unfounded accusations against respected community members. That's exactly what this investigation is about, Morgan agreed. Finding the truth, no matter where it leads. Landry stepped back, his expression closing off. Detective Parker is waiting for you in the conference room. The state forensics team wants to brief you both on their findings. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing, Reed. Your obsession with this case nearly destroyed your career once. Don't let it finish the job. As Landry left, Morgan released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The confrontation confirmed her suspicions. Landry was nervous about what they might uncover, But was it because he was personally involved in the twins' disappearance, as Eleanor had suggested, or was he simply protecting the Crawford family's interests? In the conference room, Parker was reviewing photographs of the cave where the backpacks had been found. He looked up as Morgan entered, his expression concerned. "Everything okay? You look rattled." "Just had an enlightening conversation with Landry," Morgan replied, keeping her voice low despite the empty room. "He knows we talked to Eleanor Holloway and seems worried about what she might have told us." Parker nodded grimly. "I'm not surprised. I've been doing some digging into the Crawford family and their connections to local law enforcement. It goes deeper than we thought." He spread out several documents on the table. William Crawford's father, Henry Crawford, established a private security force for the lumber operation in the 1970s. They recruited primarily from local police departments, offering significantly higher salaries. Landry was one of their first hires. So Eleanor was right about his connection to the Crawfords, Morgan mused. But there's nothing in his personnel file about his time with Crawford Lumber. That's because it was deliberately removed, Parker revealed. "I contacted a colleague at the State Police Archives. They have copies of all local department records, including the original version of Landry's file. His 20 years with Crawford Security is documented there, along with the fact that the Crawford family personally funded his police academy training." Morgan's mind raced with implications. So Landry owes his entire career to the Crawfords. That's a powerful incentive to protect their interests. "It gets worse," Parker continued, lowering his voice further. "The 1987 case with the DNA match? A 7-year-old boy disappeared from a family camping trip in Whispering Pines. His backpack was found in another cave system 2 counties over, but his body was never recovered." "Was there any connection to the Crawford family in that case?" Morgan asked. Parker nodded. The cave where the backpack was found was on property owned by a Crawford Lumber subsidiary. And guess who was head of security for that subsidiary at the time? Landry, Morgan breathed. "The local investigation was closed within a week," Parker continued. "Ruled as a tragic accident. Child wandered off, got lost in the woods, presumed dead. Sound familiar?" Morgan felt a chill run down her spine, just like the official theory in the Bennett case. "Exactly," Parker confirmed. "And there's more. I found 7 similar cases between 1975 and 2010 in a 100-mile radius around Pine Hollow, all involving children between 5 and 8 years old, all occurring in or near wooded areas with cave systems, all ruled as accidents or attributed to animal attacks." Patricia Weber was right, Morgan realized. There is a pattern. Before Parker could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. His expression turned grim as he read it. "The forensics team is at Crawford Caves," he said. "They've found something we need to see immediately." The drive to Whispering Pines National Park was tense and silent, both detectives processing the disturbing connections they'd uncovered. As they turned onto the Forest Service road leading to Crawford Caves, Morgan noticed several unmarked vehicles and a mobile command unit already set up near the cave entrance. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead forensic anthropologist, met them at the perimeter, her usually composed face showing signs of strain. "Detectives," she greeted them. "We've established a staging area inside the main chamber. What we've found, you need to see it for yourselves." Following Dr. Chen through the narrow cave entrance, Morgan and Parker descended into the earth. The temperature dropped noticeably. As they moved deeper, their path illuminated by portable lights set up by the forensics team. After about half a mile of walking through increasingly narrow passages, they emerged into a large chamber where several technicians were carefully documenting and collecting evidence. "The hunter who found the backpacks only made it this far," Dr. Chen explained, gesturing around the chamber. "But our team conducted a more thorough exploration and discovered a hidden passage behind that rock formation." She led them to a narrow crevice partially concealed by a natural stone arrangement. Beyond it lay another chamber, smaller but clearly modified by human hands. Rough shelves had been carved into the rock walls, and what appeared to be a crude sleeping area was set up. In one corner, someone was living here, Morgan observed, taking in the disturbing scene. Not just living, Dr. Chen corrected grimly. Working. She directed their attention to a work table constructed from wooden planks set atop stone supports. The surface was stained dark in places, and various tools, knives, pliers, saws, were arranged with meticulous precision. "Are those bloodstains?" Morgan asked, her voice barely audible. Dr. Chen nodded. "We've confirmed human blood from multiple sources. The table appears to have been used for processing." "Processing what?" Parker asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. Instead of responding directly, Dr. Chen led them to a side alcove where several large plastic containers were being carefully examined by forensic technicians. "We found these hidden beneath a false floor," she said quietly. "There are 12 in total." Morgan stepped closer, her heart pounding. Inside the first container, nestled in preservative fluid, were what appeared to be human bones. Small, delicate bones. "Children's remains," Dr. Chen confirmed, her clinical tone failing to mask her horror. "Preliminary examination suggests at least 8 different individuals, possibly more. Ages ranging from approximately 5 to 8 years old." Morgan felt the room sway around her. 8 children, 8 families who had never known what happened to their little ones, 8 cases that had been written off as tragic accidents or animal attacks. 8 lives ended in this cold, dark place. "Any way to determine if the Bennett twins are among them?" Parker asked, his voice steady despite the grim discovery. "DNA analysis will take time," Dr. Chen replied. "But we did find these." She held up 2 evidence bags containing small cloth name tags. "They were sewn into some clothing scraps we recovered. L. Bennett on both, likely one for each twin." Morgan closed her eyes briefly, the final confirmation hitting her like a physical blow. After 15 years of searching and hoping, this was how the Bennett case would end. Not with joyful reunions, but with 12 plastic containers in a cave of horrors. "There's something else," Dr. Chen added, leading them to another part of the chamber where a technician was photographing markings on the wall. "These symbols were carved throughout the cave, but they're concentrated here." Morgan stared at the crude carvings, circular patterns with lines radiating outward, primitive stick figures arranged in specific formations, and a repeated symbol that resembled a stylized tree or perhaps a lightning bolt. "Any idea what they mean?" Parker asked. "Doctor." Chen shook her head. "Nothing I recognize from standard archaeological references, but they appear to be deliberate and purposeful, not random graffiti." "Some kind of ritual significance?" Morgan suggested, remembering Patricia Weber's rambling theories about secretive groups operating in the forest. "Possibly," Dr. Chen agreed. "Whatever happened here went beyond simple murder. There was meaning behind it, at least to whoever did this." As they continued to examine the disturbing scene, a forensic technician approached with a small evidence bag. "Dr. Chen, we found this hidden in a crevice near the sleeping area." Inside the bag was a tarnished silver badge, not a police badge or a park ranger insignia, but a security badge with the Crawford Lumber logo clearly visible despite years of oxidation. Parker examined the badge closely. "There's a number stamped on the back. Should be possible to determine who it was issued to." Morgan nodded, thinking of Landry and his long history with Crawford Security. Could this be the final piece connecting him directly to the disappearances? As they prepared to leave the cave, Morgan's phone buzzed with a call from the station. The display showed Officer Ryan Miller, a young patrol officer who had often assisted Morgan with the Bennett case over the years. "Reed," she answered, stepping away from the group. "Detective, you need to get back to town now," Miller said, his voice tense. Patricia Weber is dead. Morgan froze. What happened? Home invasion, apparently. She was found by a neighbor about an hour ago. Multiple stab wounds. Miller paused. The thing is, her place was torn apart, like someone was looking for something. Morgan thought of the research materials spread across Patricia's living room, the maps, the files, the decades of investigation Patricia had conducted on her own. Secure the scene, she instructed. Don't let anyone touch anything until we get there. And Miller, don't tell Landry where you called me. As she ended the call, Morgan turned to find Parker watching her, his expression questioning. Patricia? Weber is dead, she told him quietly. Someone broke in and killed her, likely looking for her research files. Parker's face hardened. They're tying up loose ends. We need to get to Eleanor Holloway immediately. But as they hurried back through the cave system, Morgan's phone buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. Too late for Holloway. You're next. Stop now. We need to move, Morgan said, showing Parker the message. Now. They emerged from the cave to find the afternoon sun sinking toward the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees. As they hurried toward their vehicle, Morgan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that somewhere in these ancient woods, the same predator who had taken those children was now hunting them. What had begun as a 15-year-old cold case had erupted into an active investigation with a rising body count. The discovery of the backpacks had set in motion events that threatened not just their investigation, but their lives. And at the center of it all remained the question: how high did this conspiracy reach, and what terrible secret was worth killing? To protect? They reached Eleanor Holloway's house in record time, but Morgan knew they were too late even before they pulled into the circular driveway. Police vehicles were already parked haphazardly in front of the elegant colonial, their lights casting eerie blue and red patterns across the manicured lawn. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the evening breeze. Damn it, Morgan muttered, slamming her hand against the steering wheel. We should have taken her into protective custody immediately. Parker's face was grim as they approached the house. We had no way of knowing they'd move this quickly. Officer Jenkins, a veteran of the Pine Hollow PD, met them at the perimeter. His usually stoic face showed signs of genuine shock. It's bad in there, he warned them. Never seen anything like it in 20 years on the force. Who found her? Morgan asked, pulling on latex gloves. Housekeeper arrived for her evening shift about an hour ago, Jenkins replied. Poor woman's still in shock. Inside, the previously immaculate home had been transformed into a scene of calculated savagery. Eleanor Holloway's body lay at the foot of the grand staircase, surrounded by forensic technicians carefully documenting the scene. Morgan forced herself to look, to bear witness to what had been done to a woman whose only crime was finally choosing to tell the truth. Same MO as Patricia Weber? Parker asked quietly. Morgan nodded, noting the multiple stab wounds and the ransacked state of the house. They were looking for something specific. Any sign of the husband? Parker asked. Out of town at a legal conference in Boston, Jenkins replied. We've contacted him. He's flying back tonight. Convenient timing, Morgan murmured, her suspicion growing. Had Richard Holloway known what was coming and made sure he had an alibi? As they moved through the house, Morgan noticed something odd. While most rooms had been thoroughly searched, drawers emptied and furniture overturned, Eleanor's home office appeared relatively untouched. This doesn't make sense, she said to Parker. If they were looking for evidence or documentation, wouldn't they have focused on her office? Parker examined the room carefully. Unless they already knew it wouldn't be here, or they already found what they were looking for somewhere else in the house, Morgan finished. A thought struck her. We need to check her car. Eleanor's Mercedes was parked in the attached garage, its sleek black surface reflecting the overhead lights. Morgan circled it slowly, peering through the windows. Nothing obvious, she said, trying the driver's door. To her surprise, it was unlocked. The interior was pristine, showing Eleanor's characteristic attention to detail. Morgan carefully opened the glove compartment, finding only the vehicle registration and insurance documents. The center console held nothing but breath mints and designer sunglasses. She was about to give up when she noticed a slight bulge in the sun visor. Folding it down, she discovered a small USB drive taped to the back. "Parker," she called, carefully removing the ATATGA device. "I think I found what they were looking for, or at least what they missed." Parker examined the USB drive. "We need to check this immediately, but not here, not on any department equipment." Morgan nodded in agreement. The growing evidence of a conspiracy involving Pine Hollow's police chief meant they couldn't trust anyone in the department or any of its resources. "I have a laptop at home that's never connected to the department network," she said. "We can check it there." As they prepared to leave, Morgan's phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown. "Number? You found it? Now you die too." "They're watching us," she said, showing Parker the message. "Right now." Parker's hand moved to his weapon as he scanned the growing crowd of neighbors and onlookers gathered beyond the police perimeter. "We need to move," he said quietly, "and not to your place. They'll expect that." "I know somewhere we can go," Morgan replied, thinking of an old hunting cabin her father had left her. Remote, defensible, and unknown to anyone in the department. "But we need to be careful. They could be following us." As they made their way back to their vehicle, Morgan noticed a familiar face among the bystanders. Michael Dawson, the hunter who had discovered the backpacks. His presence at this second crime scene seemed too coincidental. "Parker," she murmured. 3:00, the man in the green jacket. That's our hunter." Parker glanced casually in the indicated direction. Could be coincidence. "In Pine Hollow? After everything we've seen today?" Morgan shook her head. "I don't believe in coincidences anymore. They took a circuitous route out of town, using back roads and doubling back several times to ensure they weren't being followed. The sun had fully set by the time they reached the narrow dirt track leading to Morgan's cabin, plunging the dense forest into darkness penetrated only by their headlights. "Your father chose quite the remote spot," Parker commented as they bounced along the rough road. "He valued his privacy," Morgan replied, "especially after he testified against Crawford Lumber in that environmental lawsuit back in the 90s. Parker looked at her sharply. "Your father opposed the Crawfords? You never mentioned that." Morgan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "It's not something I advertise around town. The lawsuit nearly bankrupted him. Legal fees, mysterious tax audits, sudden cancellation of business contracts. Classic Crawford tactics." "Is that why you became a cop?" Parker asked. "To fight against that kind of corruption?" "Partly," Morgan admitted, "though I never imagined I'd be investigating a case that might implicate them in multiple child murders." The cabin finally came into view, a solid structure of logs and stone, built to withstand the harsh mountain winters. Morgan parked behind it, out of sight from the access road. "No electricity," she explained as they made their way inside. "But there's a generator and propane lamps." Once they had light, Morgan set up her laptop on the rough wooden table. The USB drive seemed to contain only a single video file, dated the day before. "It's Eleanor," Morgan said as the video began playing. "She must have recorded this after we left yesterday." Eleanor Holloway's face filled the screen, her expression grave but determined. "If you're watching this," she began, "then what I feared has likely happened. I'm making this record because I've carried the burden of my silence for 15 years, and I can't take it to my grave." She took a deep breath before continuing. "What I told Detectives Reed and Parker today was only part of the truth. The man I saw leading the Bennett twins into the woods wasn't just any Crawford security officer. It was Robert Landry. And he wasn't alone." Morgan and Parker exchanged shocked glances as Eleanor continued. There was another man waiting deeper in the trees. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I recognized William Crawford's distinctive walk. He was younger then, not yet a senator but already powerful in Pine Hollow. Eleanor's voice trembled slightly. I didn't tell the detectives this because I know what the Crawfords are capable of. Their family has been taking children for generations, not for ransom, not for any reason most people would understand. She leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping to a near whisper. It's about the ritual, the symbol carved into Crawford Rock, the one that appears in their family crest and logging company logo. It's ancient, predating European settlement of this area. William's great-grandfather found something in those caves when he first established the logging operation, something that showed him how to harness certain energies. Morgan felt a chill run down her spine as Eleanor continued her incredible story. A tale of a prominent family's generations-long involvement in ritual sacrifice, of power maintained through unthinkable acts, of a conspiracy so deeply embedded in Pine Hollow that it had remained hidden for nearly a century. The children are chosen carefully, Eleanor explained, her clinical tone somehow making the horror worse. Always twins when they can find them. Always between 5 and 8 years old. The Crawford family believes their blood feeds whatever, dwells in the deepest part of the cave system, something they worship as the source of their continued prosperity. As the video concluded, Eleanor looked directly into the camera, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. I'm sending copies of this to several trusted individuals outside Pine Hollow, with instructions to forward them to state and federal authorities if anything happens to me. The cycle of sacrifice ends now, whatever the cost. The screen went blank, leaving Morgan and Parker sitting in stunned silence, the propane lamp flickering shadows across the cabin walls. This is beyond anything I imagined, Parker finally said. A cult? Human sacrifice? It sounds impossible. After what we saw in that cave today, can you really say it's impossible? Morgan asked quietly. The ritual table, the symbols, the containers with children's remains. It all fits with Eleanor's story. Parker ran a hand through his hair, his skepticism warring with the evidence they'd seen firsthand. If what she's saying is true, this goes beyond Landry or even Senator Crawford. We're talking about an entire family legacy built on ritual murder. And a power structure designed to protect it, Morgan added. Police, local government, business interests, all connected to the Crawfords, all with a vested interest in keeping their secrets buried. We need to get this to the FBI, Parker said firmly. This is beyond local or even state jurisdiction. Agreed, Morgan nodded. But first, we need to survive the night. Eleanor said she sent copies to trusted people outside Pine Hollow, but the timing of her murder suggests they got to her before she could follow through. Which means, Parker concluded grimly, we're the only ones with this evidence, and they know we have it. The night settled heavily around the cabin, the forest. Beyond the windows, a wall of impenetrable darkness. Morgan stood at the edge of the single dirt-streaked window, carefully observing the surrounding area without exposing herself. Nothing moved in the shadows, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. We should take shifts, she said to Parker, who was examining the cabin's limited security features. I don't think they could have followed us, but after what we've learned today, I'm not taking any chances. Agreed, Parker nodded, testing the sturdiness of the back door's lock. This place is defensible, but far from secure, and we have no cell reception out here. Morgan moved to her father's old gun cabinet and unlocked it with a key she kept on her personal keychain. Inside were a hunting rifle, a shotgun, and boxes of ammunition. My father taught me to shoot when I was 12, she explained, loading the shotgun with practiced ease. Said a woman living alone should know how to protect herself. Smart man, Parker replied, accepting the rifle she handed him. I'll take first watch. You should try to get some rest. Tomorrow, we need to figure out how to get that evidence to the FBI without the Crawfords or Landry intercepting us. Morgan knew he was right. They were both exhausted after the day's shocking discoveries, but sleep seemed impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the children's bones in those plastic containers, the ritualistic symbols carved into the cave walls, the broken bodies of Patricia Weber and Eleanor Holloway. "Did you notice the symbol Eleanor mentioned?" she asked, pacing the small cabin. "The one she said appears in the Crawford family crest and logging company logo?" Parker nodded. "I did some research on regional corporate logos a few years back, for another case. Crawford Lumber's emblem is a stylized tree with a lightning bolt running through it, not unlike some of the carvings we saw in the cave. It's hiding in plain sight," Morgan murmured. "They've built their entire public identity around the very symbol of their secret rituals. The arrogance of it, or the dedication," Parker countered. "If Eleanor was right about this going back generations, we're not dealing with some impulsive killers. This is a family legacy, a belief system passed down through the years." Morgan shuddered at the thought. How many children have they taken over the decades? How many families left without answers while the 1950s? Unlike modern topographical maps that showed Crawford Caves as a single system, this older version indicated multiple interconnected networks spreading beneath the mountains, like the roots of some enormous tree. "My father used to talk about this," she said, memories stirring. He claimed the official maps were deliberately inaccurate, that the Crawford family had surveyors remove certain passages from public records to protect their timber claims, or to hide access points to their ritual chambers, Parker suggested. "Look at this notation here. In faded ink, barely visible, someone had marked a location with a small X and the initials RCS. A date alongside it read June 1952. Ritual chamber sacrifice?" Morgan suggested, her voice hollow. Parker nodded grimly. "And June 1952 coincides with the disappearance of the Mitchell twins from a neighboring county. They were never found, presumed drowned in a flash flood. Another case that fits the pattern," Morgan said. "But this gives us something else too, a potential back entrance to the cave system. If we can access it undetected, we might be able to gather more evidence before confronting Crawford and Landry." "It's risky," Parker cautioned. "If they've been using these caves for decades, they'll know every passage. We could be walking into a trap. Or we could find proof that even the most corrupt judge couldn't ignore," Morgan countered. "Think about it. We have Eleanor's testimony, but it's just one video. Her copies might never have been sent. We need more." Before Parker could respond, a sound outside caught their attention. The distinct crunch of tires on gravel, still some distance away but approaching the cabin. "Someone's coming," Parker said, moving quickly to the window. "Single vehicle, coming slow, trying to be quiet." Morgan grabbed her service weapon and the shotgun. "There's a cellar access behind the cabin. Leads to a storm shelter my father built. We can use it to circle around behind whoever this is." They slipped outside through the rear door, careful to move silently across the leaf-strewn ground to the half-hidden cellar doors. Once below, they navigated through the musty concrete shelter to an exit point some 50 yards behind the cabin, concealed by a tangle of blackberry bushes. Emerging cautiously, they circled through the woods until they had a clear view of the approach road. A dark SUV with Pine Hollow Police Department markings was parked some distance from the cabin, and two figures were making their way cautiously toward the building. "Landry," Morgan whispered, recognizing the police chief's distinctive silhouette. "And that's Michael Dawson with him, the hunter who found the backpacks." "Not just a hunter," Parker murmured. "Look at how he's moving. That's tactical training, military or special ops." They watched as the two men approached the cabin from different angles, weapons drawn, using hand signals to coordinate their movements. This was no casual visit. It was a tactical assault. "How did they find us?" Morgan wondered aloud. "Tracker," Parker replied grimly. Must have placed it on our vehicle at the Holloway scene. Amateur mistake on our part. When Landry and Dawson reached the cabin, they entered in a coordinated breach maneuver that confirmed Parker's assessment of their training. Minutes later, they emerged, clearly frustrated at finding their quarry gone. They'll search the area, Parker whispered. We need to move. Not yet, Morgan replied, her eyes fixed on the men. Look at Landry's hand. He's holding something. Through her compact binoculars, Morgan could see that Landry was examining a small stone object, an amulet or talisman of some kind, carved with the same symbol they had seen in the caves. He's preparing for something, she murmured. This isn't just about silencing witnesses. They're getting ready for another ritual. The timing fits, Parker agreed. If this is seasonal, as Eleanor's video suggested, and it's been 15 years since the Bennett twins, they need another sacrifice, Morgan finished, feeling sick. We need to get to town, now. Not just to get the evidence out, but to warn people. Using the forest for cover, they made their way carefully away from the cabin, moving parallel to the access road, but staying deep within the trees. It was slow going, but eventually they reached the main road where Parker had earlier arranged for an old college friend to leave a vehicle, a precaution that now seemed prescient. The drive back to Pine Hollow was tense, both detectives acutely aware that they might be heading into a trap. But they also knew that staying hidden in the woods wasn't an option, not with lives potentially at stake. We need to split up, Morgan said as they approached the town limits. I'll try to reach my contact at the FBI field office in the next county. You get the evidence and Eleanor's video to your state police connection. Parker nodded reluctantly. Keep your phone on encrypted mode. It'll still ping towers, but they can't track the content of communications. Check in every hour, same code we established earlier. If I don't check in? Morgan asked, though she already knew the answer. Then I bring everything down on Pine Hollow. State police, FBI, media. The whole dam breaks, Parker promised. But it won't come to that. We're going to end this. They parted ways at the edge of town, Parker continuing on toward the state highway while Morgan doubled back toward Pine Hollow. Her first stop would be the Bennett home. After 15 years of false leads and dashed hopes, they deserved to know the truth about their children's fate. And perhaps more importantly, they might have information that could help connect the final dots in this generations-long conspiracy. The Bennett house sat on a quiet street, lined with maple trees, their leaves just beginning to hint at the coming fall. It was a modest home, well-maintained, but bearing subtle signs of the tragedy that had befallen its occupants. The twins' names still visible in faded paint on the mailbox, a memorial wind chime hanging from the front porch, a small garden stone, inscribed with Lily and Lucas forever in our hearts. Morgan approached the front door with a heavy heart, knowing the news she brought would shatter what little peace the family had managed to find. Before she could knock, the door opened to reveal Rachel Bennett, the twins' mother looking older than her 50 years. I knew you'd come, she said simply. When I heard about Eleanor and Patricia, I knew it was starting again. Surprised, Morgan followed her inside. The living room walls were covered with maps, newspaper clippings, and photographs. A civilian version of a detective's investigation board, meticulously maintained over 15 years. "You've been investigating all this time," Morgan realized, taking in the scope of Rachel's research. "Did you think I would stop just because the police did?" Rachel asked, her voice carrying no accusation, only weariness. "They were my children. Detective Reed, my whole world." "I'm so sorry," Morgan said, meaning it more deeply than she could express. "We've found them, Rachel, or what's left of them, in Crawford Caves." Rachel nodded slowly, no tears coming. Perhaps she had cried them all years ago. "I know what the Crawfords are," she said quietly. "What they've been doing in those caves, I've known for years." Morgan stared at her in shock. "Why didn't you come forward? With what evidence? The ravings of a grieving mother?" Rachel gave a bitter laugh. "I tried, Detective. 3 different officers, 2 private investigators, even a reporter from the big city paper. They all thought I was crazy, or they were paid to pretend they did." She moved to a cabinet and unlocked a hidden compartment, removing a leather-bound journal. "This belonged to my grandmother. Her twin siblings disappeared in 1925. Same pattern, school outing, children vanished without a trace. The Crawfords were already powerful even then." Morgan accepted the journal with reverence, understanding. It represented nearly a century of grief and unanswered questions. "This could be crucial evidence," she said. "We believe they're preparing for another ritual." Rachel's face hardened. "The harvest moon is tomorrow night. That's when they do it, when certain stars align above the central chamber. My grandmother wrote about it. They believe it feeds whatever lives deep in the mountain, the thing that grants them their power and prosperity." "How do you know all this?" Morgan asked, increasingly astonished by the depth of Rachel's knowledge. "Because my family was once part of it," Rachel confessed, her voice barely audible. "Generations ago, before my grandmother's time. We broke away, tried to stop it. The Crawfords have been punishing my bloodline ever since, taking our children, when they can." The revelation sent Morgan's mind reeling with implications. The twins weren't random victims. They were specifically targeted. "Just like all the others," Rachel confirmed. "Always from families who opposed the Crawfords or threatened their power in some way." "Your father's environmental lawsuit? The reason they never came after you as a child was because you were an only daughter. They need specific types. Twins are preferred, but any children with certain birthmarks or traits will serve." Morgan's phone buzzed with a message from Parker. "Contact made. Help coming. Return to rendezvous point." With the FBI and state police mobilizing, they might finally have enough firepower to break the Crawfords' hold on Pine Hollow. "I need to go," Morgan told Rachel. "But I promise you, this ends tonight. For Lily and Lucas and all the others." As Morgan turned to leave, Rachel caught her arm. "Be careful, Detective. The Crawfords aren't the only ones you need to fear. Their followers are everywhere in this town. People you'd never suspect. All bound by blood oaths and shared guilt. And if they can't complete the ritual tomorrow night, they'll become desperate. Dangerous." With a final promise to return, Morgan slipped out of the Bennett home and made her way cautiously back to her vehicle. As she drove toward the rendezvous point Parker had established, she couldn't shake the feeling that Pine Hollow itself was watching her. A town built on secrets and sacrifice, its prosperity watered with the blood of innocent children for nearly a century. The true horror wasn't just what had happened to the Bennett twins and the others. It was that an entire community had tacitly allowed it to continue, generation after generation, protecting their prosperity at the most unthinkable cost. But tomorrow night, under the harvest moon, it would finally end. The backpacks found in that cave had started an unraveling that couldn't be stopped. The truth was coming to light, and with it, justice for those who had been silenced for far too long. What happened next would shake Pine Hollow to its foundations, exposing the darkness that had festered beneath its surface for generations. The Bennett twins would finally find justice, and the cycle of sacrifice would be broken forever. But the confrontation would demand courage, sacrifice, and a reckoning with evil that few could imagine. If you found yourself gripped by this story of long-buried secrets and the quest for justice, please subscribe to our channel for more chilling, true crime investigations and unexplained mysteries. Comment below with your thoughts. What small-town secrets do you think are hiding in plain sight? And remember to share this video with anyone who appreciates stories where truth, no matter how long concealed, finally comes to light.